people don't wear hats as much as they used to. Now, a good hat used to be a critical part of anybody's fashion choices. Maybe more than one hat. This was true in rural areas and urban areas, maybe different kinds of hats. But a good lid, a good hat, if you didn't have a good hat, I mean, what are you even doing? At some point, I blame John F. Kennedy. But at some point, hats became not as frequent. But luckily for us, there are some that carry the torch. There's some who remind us the sartorial advantage of a good hat. And one of them is the legendary Greg Palast, the author of The Best Democracy Money Can Buy, along with other books. His latest film, Vigilante, Georgia's Voter Suppression Hitman, produced by Martin Sheen, to be released soon. The legendary Greg Palast and his hat are here on the program right now. Sir, how you doing?
Pretty good, especially because joining Martin Sheen as a producer is a guy named Thom Hartmann. So thank you, Thom, for the film, who will be a producer on the film we release next month, Vigilante, the Vote Suppression Hitman of Georgia.
All right, so tell us about you're doing work on the Kemp investigation that fits within the broader themes of dark money and secret money and how we try to make sure that oligarchic control over the levers of government doesn't, take out democracy entirely. What are the most important things people need to be knowing? What are you tracking on the Kemp investigation?
Plenty we're tracking. I've been tracking Brian Kemp for now, I can't believe it, 9 years since he was Secretary of State, head of elections, because Brian Kemp is kind of the vote suppressor in chief of this nation. He's the Republican governor right now, which a seat he got because he was Secretary of State in charge of counting his votes in 2018 against Stacey Abrams. Before that election, I was working at Rolling Stone at the time, and before that election, Kemp had removed 500,000 voters from the voter rolls. Like that, he just purged them. People don't realize that's where the vote trickery really goes, is in wiping out other voters' even right to vote. He wiped out 500,000, and he said that they don't live in Georgia anymore. So I got the guys from Amazon and eBay to go through the list of people he said didn't live in Georgia anymore. And they found out that 340,136 exactly. They gave me the printout of the names, every single name. These are voters who are still living at their voter registration address, though they seem to be committing not the crime of voting illegally from out of state, but the crime of voting while black. 1/3 voters. That's why Stacey Abrams said, she was citing my investigation, I will not be inaugurated, but I won the election. And now there's a rematch, 2018. Brian Kemp kept,
Can we dwell on that? Can we dwell on that thing you just said first? Mm-hmm. On those 346,000, you said 500,000 and 346,000. You were able to, through a FOIA request, get that list of folks, and what did you learn about them? Were they in fact Georgia residents? Were they in fact? How many of them were in fact eligible voters? Say more about what you learned.
Okay. Well, let's put a face on this. Yes, 1/3 voters were removed from the voter rolls by Brian Kemp on grounds that they didn't live at their legal registration address, mostly out of Georgia. And we went through literally name by name with the address, with America's top address experts. How do we get this information from Brian Kemp? Well, you see the hat? I'm an investigative reporter. We often get wonderful inside material from Kemp's office. But in this case, I went through the front door. That is the front door of a federal courtroom with an election board member from Georgia, to demand that Kemp open his files so that we can get this information and get his purge files and his secret correspondence. Very much what the DA is trying to do with Kemp now, is open his files. Well, I've been in court with Kemp, and luckily I beat his pants off, and he had to, Kemp not only had to turn over his documents to us, but he had to pay my lawyers, including Gerald Griggs, who's now the president of the NAACP in Georgia. So I've been in court with this guy.
Just so I'm clear, the 1/3 voters, those are 1/3 that were taken off the voter rolls, who you found were eligible?
Completely.
Yeah.
I mean, he took off 500,000. There was about a couple 100,000 that had indeed moved, died, moved. That's legit. But 300,000 were not.
Yeah.
Okay.
And how
So
many
we
of
had
those, and what were the demographics of those 300,000 eligible voters that were removed from the voter rolls?
I'll tell you what, you win a free copy of Vigilante of our new film if you guess the color of the voters that they were removing. Tick tock, tick tock. Yes,
Yeah.
you're right. Black voters, especially, and to put a face on it. I was at the polling stations in 18 and in 20. I keep seeing this again and again. In 18, I was outside the polling station in Atlanta. A woman was hysterical in tears. You'll see this in the film, by the way. Hysterical because her grandmother was going in to vote for her 50th year of voting. Was told, "Scram, lady." She's 92 years old. She had a walker. They said, "Get out. Take your walker. Get out of here." They said, "You don't live in Atlanta anymore. You can't vote here."
Her presence in Atlanta, unless she had caught a very recent plane or driven a long drive, her presence in Atlanta to show up to vote is some evidence that she, in fact, was in Atlanta.
Yeah. Well, I got to tell you, in this case, they said this woman didn't live in Atlanta. I went down the street to her home that they said she no longer lived in. There was a picture of Martin Luther King on the wall. I said, "Oh, you knew King?" He said, "That was my cousin. He was having dinner here every Sunday." So they literally knocked off Martin Luther King's 92-year-old cousin off the voter rolls. And you'll see this in the film. I'm there while it happens.
Yeah.
But it's also, that's putting a face to 1/3 of a million voters. That's why Kemp is governor. And again, he refused to resign as Secretary of State, which you normally would do when you run for governor, because, hey, even the Wall Street Journal thought it was unethical to count your own votes. It's not just the count. It goes back to removing voters. But the count is important.
What Fox wouldn't want to not only guard the hen house, but decide what hens get to be inside it?
And get to vote. Now, this is very important for what's going on right now. So, for example, as you know, Donald Trump called up Brian Kemp, the governor, and said, I assume he threw the same line that he threw at the Secretary of State, find me 11,000 votes, which was Joe Biden's victory margin in 2020.
Yeah.
Find me the 11,000 votes. And so what I'm thinking is that so Kemp is avoiding that subpoena. But what he has done, I'm wondering if he said, well, don't worry about 2020. We got 2024 locked. And what I mean is they passed a law. Brian Kemp came up with a law after the shock loss of Trump in Georgia and the loss of 2 Senate seats. Kemp came up with a law, SB 202, which, are you ready for this, he takes away the power to certify the state's elections from the Secretary of State, the guy that Trump was pressuring to no avail. And it says that the final arbiter of votes in Georgia will now be a new elections board headed by ... Brian Kemp. So he will once again, by the way, count his own votes, decide which votes are qualified or disqualified. By the way, Jeff, one little nasty secret about America is we don't count all the votes. I'm not talking about fancy stuff like switching computers and playing games. I forget all that. No, this is above board where they say this ballot was mailed in and they have an exact match rule in Georgia. So if you've left out your middle initial, they can't, they won't count your vote there.